All right, I'm calling this meeting of the County Board to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Furtado.
Here.
Goss.
Here.
Hanauer Friedman.
Here.
Harper.
Here.
Ingram.
Here.
Locke.
Here.
Lockshin.
Here.
Michaels.
Present.
Rodriguez. Rogers.
Here.
Sexton. Storr.
Here.
Straub.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Thorsland.
Here.
Vanich Thiernot.
Here.
Williams. Wilson.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Cowart.
Present.
Esri. Patterson.
Here.
We have a quorum. All right, we'll start out with the prayer for tonight. May there be peace for all people, harmony between individuals, races, religions, and nations. May God's abundance manifest for all. Amen. All right, stand for the pledge, please. Thank you. Would the clerk please read the notice of the meeting?
Notice is hereby given that a regular meeting of the County Board, Champaign County, Illinois, will convene on January 19, 2023, 6:30 p.m. in the Shields Carter Meeting Room, Brookings Administrative Center, 1776 East Washington Street, Urbana, Illinois, in said county for the purpose of allowing and ordering payments of claims against the county, receiving and acting upon reports of committees, and such other matters as may be brought before said meeting, which said meeting shall continue in session from day to day until the completion of said business.
Thank you, Matt. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda and addenda? Michaels, second. Taylor. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We've got next the date and time of the regular meetings posted on the agenda. Let's move down to public participation, 5 minutes per individual. I have one card, Mike Heaton and Sue Thomas.
Hello, my name's Mike Heaton. I'm from Champaign, and politically, I lean blue.
And I'm Sue Thomas. I'm from Urbana, and politically, I lean red.
We are both local members of the Braver Angels, a national nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing the partisan divide in America, or help end the partisan divide in America today.
So even though Mike and I have opposing political viewpoints, we know that we can disagree respectfully and find areas of common ground. And for the good of our community, we need our elected leaders to join us in this approach instead of the divisive polarization that is tearing us apart at all levels of government.
Our local alliance of Braver Angels has already begun meeting with a variety of local organizations in Champaign County to discuss polarization. Some of these organizations lean blue, some lean red, some are completely nonpartisan, but they all agree that the current division in politics is hurting our community.
So we're partnering with the University of Illinois with support from the League of Women Voters and the News Gazette to present a public town hall called Building a House United on February 15th at 7 p.m. at the iHotel. And with a panel of experts on hyperpartisanship. And this will include Bill Doherty, he's the co-founder of Braver Angels. He and the organization have been featured on various national news outlets over the past few years.
At the town hall, the public will be invited to ask questions of these experts about how we can address the issue of polarization, especially here at the local level. and would like to directly invite you, our local elected officials, to come to this event and commit to working together in civil and respectful manner for the good of the entire community.
You can learn more about the event and also register. The information is on the flyers, but it's also at il.braverangels.org. So we thank you for your time. We hope to see you at the town hall on the 15th. And more importantly, we hope that you will commit to our vision of a community where we can have disagreements, but we can approach them with respect and civility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Ingram.
Second, Carter.
Motion and a second. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Discussion. No discussion. Can we have a roll call, please?
Furtado,
Yes.
Goss,
Yes.
Hanover Friedman,
Yes.
Harper,
Yes.
Ingram,
Yes.
Locke,
Yes.
Lockshin, Michaels,
Yes.
Rogers,
Yes.
Sexton, Storr,
Yes.
Straub,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Thorsland,
Yes.
Fanish Theronot,
Yes.
Wilson,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Yes.
Patterson.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt. Passes. Are there any communications from the board at this time? Ms. Furtado.
I just wanted to take a moment to encourage people to attend the special finance study session next Tuesday and make a note that it's at 6 o'clock. What we're going to try to do is just go over some of the basics of financial decisions we make on the board. So just kind of walking through how do you read the amendments, like what all those numbers mean on different resolutions. What does the budget process look like? What are some of the key dates and how does the budget work? We're kind of an overview of where do we get our revenue and where does it go. So it's just a very high level, but just to kind of, it's aimed for new board members, but anybody is welcome to come. And just a big shout out to the admin staff, particularly Tammy, Megan, and Michelle, who basically put the presentation together and are gonna, so, but hope everybody's invited, but particularly for new members, it's to try to orient us so that we can have better conversations about the financial votes and a better understanding.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Stan.
Yeah, it just came to my attention an hour ago, and I think it's appropriate that as a board, we wish Executive Summers' dad a happy 90th birthday. Evidently, Steve never added any stress to his father when he was a teenager.
That's probably pretty accurate, Stan.
And you're still not giving them
Thank
stress,
you.
it looks like.
No, that's changed. All right. Thank you. All right. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, our regular meeting?
So moved, Bench there not.
Finish there or not? And then Jen Straub with the second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Motion to approve the minutes from December 19th, our special meeting. Can I have a motion? Thorsland, a second. Second by Lockshin. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carries. Thank you. All right, summary of action from standing committees is posted. Summary of action taken by the Committee of the Whole, also posted. Moving on to new business. Item 13, adoption of resolution 2023-16, authorizing payment of claims. Can I have a motion, please? Furtado and Court. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. To item B, adoption of resolution 2023-17, authorizing purchases not following purchasing policy. Can I have a motion to approve? Oh, again, Furtado, second. Thorsland. Any comments or questions? Mr. Goss.
Yeah, I'd like to make a point here. It seems like, let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times out of the last 7 months, we've had the county clerk on here. 4 of those 5 times have been for the same exact reason, supposed emergency for Minuteman Press. I might buy it the first time, but everything can't be an emergency. And I think if we're gonna put these things on here, I think we need to say something to that staff and say, listen, everything is an emergency. It was simple. You didn't get a purchase order from a printing. That's not that hard to come up with. I mean, I realize it's probably not a great big deal, but then if it's not such a big deal, then why do we list it? If we've got a purchasing policy, we need to start following it. 1 time's excusable, 5 times is not excusable.
I knew the clerk Ammons would not be here. I thought perhaps Angie would be here. I'm not seeing her, so I will relay that question to Angie, and I will get back with you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, County Executive. I just want to talk about the same topic, but just in a different venue. So when I look at the last 2 items on page 67, no purchase order issued, and the explanation is there wasn't enough bids received or evaluated. And from a process standpoint, is that something typical through the county clerk's office, just no bid or single source for products and services? And so the point here is, this is paid in December. First order was made in February, and then the same reason occurred in August. And so my question really is, or maybe just a comment, it would be good if there was either additional explanation why there wasn't multiple bids considered, or maybe, thinking out of the box, maybe the clerk doesn't have to follow that process. So I just would like to have, I know I did reach out to Angie today, and I got an answer from her, because I want to just get a background on this, but it just seems that from a process standpoint, from a governmental body, regardless what organization we're in, we should be diligent to follow the process. End of comment.
Thank you. I will follow up again with Clerk Ammons when he returns, and we'll share what he says if you've already spoken with Angie. George, go ahead, Mr. Danos.
All right, thank you. I've got a couple updates on the last 2 items from the non-conforming purchases policy. Those 2 could have been avoided if the toggling in the munis had been pressed for an existing contract. But we rely on the initiative of the departments to make those entries correctly. It is the responsibility of my office to have our staff contact the staff of the departments, and that did occur in this case. So there's a little bit of follow-up, but I do want to put in perspective, there was a contract. There was not the avoidance of getting 3 bids for this one, but they didn't claim credit for that in the system. The second thing is, one of those items is between $5,000 and $10,000. In the year 2023, we did change the purchasing policy so that the triple bid requirement starts at the threshold of $10,000, not $5,000. But this did occur, of course, in the previous calendar year. So I just wanted to make sure that the record reflected the most recent information. Thanks.
Thank you.
George.
That was a great response.
Diane, did you have a comment as well? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as I understand, and I run into this problem at the U of I, the clerk purchased a system, and these are apparently additions to a system that exists. If I buy a Buick and the transmission goes out, or I want to upgrade it with a new dashboard that has a better entertainment center, I don't go to bid because I'm stuck with the one brand now, the one vendor. So I think Stephanie may know more about this, but this is, to me, sounds like the bids weren't required, one, because they didn't push the right button on the system, and two, that they're purchasing things to go with something that they already have. So you're not going to get a software update, or in this case, these permanent lists of voter registration and stuff from a different vendor when you have a system with this particular vendor. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what it read to me. So it is not following policy, but mostly because of what George explained. They didn't click the right button when they filed it.
Mr. Ingram.
And just to clarify from George, this is the newer system that just started this year, is that right? Because it's not a system that I used last year. Okay, so it's a newer thing. I wouldn't have known to probably toggle either, but hopefully now everybody knows. Thanks.
Any further questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. On to item C, adoption of resolution number 2023-18, increasing juror pay for Petit jurors in trials reasonably expected to endure more than 3 weeks. Judge Ben Dyer is here. I'd ask him to come up to the mic at this time.
So moved. Ingram?
Second, Taylor.
We have a motion and a second. Questions for Judge Dyer? Ms. Lockshin.
I know this is covered in the extensive memo we got, but could you just talk a little bit more about how many trials you think, or how often this would come up within a typical year in the courts?
Is the microphone on now? Sounds like it. Okay. Thank you and good evening to everybody. If I don't know you, I think I know a lot of you, then I hope you'll introduce yourselves to me at the conclusion of the meeting. The question, as I understand it, relates to how often is this circumstance likely to arise, a Petit jury reasonably expected to endure for more than 3 weeks? The answer is it's not very likely. In the past 5 years, excuse me, we've just had this upcoming trial that I'm staring down the barrel of in April and May, and then there was a medical malpractice trial in the past calendar year, which was scheduled to endure for 4 weeks. So I think the memorandum states, I think this is accurate, that the average impact of this on the county budget is likely to be negligible, but it will be uneven. In some years, you might have 2 medical malpractice trials that go 3, 4, 5 weeks. In some, you might have a stretch of 2, 3, or 4 years where that doesn't happen.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Ms. Furtado.
I'd like to thank Tammy, who spent some time reaching out to further understand this, and just in case, especially for new board members, we did put an additional $15,000 into the budget during the budget process because we anticipated, in particular, that one long trial. So according to Tammy's analysis, and she could correct me if I'm wrong, for 2023, if we make this decision, there is not anticipated an additional appropriation to accommodate this decision. However, there are some additional space needs for jury selection and some equipment needs for that trial that might have to come to us later that might require an amendment, but not for this particular. Is that a correct analysis? The other thing is, I wanted to mention at the end of this memo, it addresses the question of just in general, why is jury payment $10 and it hasn't changed since 1965? That, I think, is maybe a bigger question that we can't, I support this. But I also would like to ask the administration during the budget process, work with the courts, and I'm not saying my thoughts about this at all. I would just like an analysis of what it would look like if we raised it to match Sangamon and Peoria, which is at 15. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that we're going to ever get to some, like, according to this, if we had raised it for inflation, that would be $90 a day. Look, that's not we don't have that. But maybe we could bump it up a little, but I think that that's a question better served through the budget process. And so I'm asking now to give us that to consider during the budget process and what that would look like. And until I know what it would look like, I can't speak to whether it would be possible.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Judge, for being here. I had questions about this too, just as being a new person, and Tammy very graciously spent time with me to help me understand this. And I appreciate Tammy for doing that. I guess what I'd like to understand from the judge, just more for my knowledge, so I suppose everyone here has been on jury duty. I've been jury duty a long time ago. But why 3 weeks? Why not 1 week? Why not 2 weeks? And just a little bit more why you settled on your dollar amount rather than like $50 a day, et cetera. Does that make sense?
It does. I understand the question. I think the answer to those several questions are we settled on the duration of more than 3 weeks because we wanted to pick, honestly, something we thought would gain approval at the county board. We have an immediate need of an 8-week. We're going to impose upon citizens in this county very soon an 8-week jury duty for a large civil trial. And I mean, that's an enormous burden on people. When you think about the current compensation scheme of $10 per day, you're essentially asking people to not work for 2 months and be away from their families during business hours and be paid for 2 months of work, a total of about $400. To us, that seemed unreasonable. So we came, that's the temporal answer, why now? And we wanted to select something that we thought would be palatable to everybody at the county board. We looked at, some counties engage in a graduated payment, and the theory behind that is if you've had jury service, often you go for 1 day and you wait, and then for hours, and then you're sent home and cursing lawyers and judges and litigants. And then you come back another day and the same thing happens. And then maybe you're done with your jury service. Some counties in Illinois pay the first 2 days of jury service at a much lower rate. You're asking people to give up 1 or 2 days of their time, and then they're back to their lives. I think there's a recognition that in longer trials, it's a much greater sacrifice. You're asking people to give up a significant amount of work or childcare, whatever it is that they're doing, they have to give up. And so the compensation in Lake and Madison counties and in other jurisdictions outside of Illinois increases as your length of service increases. I think in recognition of the fact that a 3-week sacrifice is significantly different than a 3-day sacrifice and onward. As for why we settled at $40, we knew what we could do with the budget that was planned. We thought that $40 we could basically do with what we had budgeted last year for this fiscal year at the courthouse. But I think it would be a good idea to enact a resolution going forward that would set the same limit. And the secondary purpose of the memorandum, I'm not a politician now anyway, and the idea is I think this would be something really worth studying. What's fair, what else is going on in Illinois, and there are a number of different approaches that could be taken as to how to compensate jurors. The memorandum cites the National Center for State Courts. That's one of several resources that looks at what state courts are doing across the country and might give you some ideas about how other jurisdictions approach this problem. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Ingram.
I want to thank Judge Dyer for being here. he and I spoke about this a little bit a month ago, and I'm really happy that he was able to put in a lot more time researching this than I was, because my life kind of blew up a little bit. But to the point I think that Ms. Furtado and the judge have made, the idea of looking at this and seeing, what might make sense in comparison to other counties, which we have in front of us, I would kind of like to see what it looks like if we were to make a change from day one, or maybe just from after even just a week. I think anybody, as you mentioned, Mr. Wilson, being on jury duty, if you've ever sat through a jury selection process and seen what some of those jury pools look like, I sat in one time where a young black man was brought in to face a potential jury of his peers of 50 folks, and 49 were white, and one was Latino. And it just, if we are going to actually care about the folks that are in our system and making sure that they have juries of their actual peers, I realize that a bump from, say, $10 to $20 is not necessarily a big jump, but it does feel like at least there's some sort of care placed in the idea of compensating people at least a little bit for the time that they are going to be away, because I think we lose a lot of the working class folks that you would want to see if you were a 25-year-old person going into a jury pool room. So we lose a lot of them due to those financial hardships and just the fact that they don't have the time or the ability. They aren't salaried generally, and probably can't sit there for even a couple of days. So I would definitely love to see that. Even if we looked at something graduated, I think Lake County has an interesting way of doing it. At least they acknowledge the same thing that the judge just said, which is the longer you go, the more sacrifice there is. So I do thank the judge for his input, and everybody's for theirs as well.
Thank you, Mike. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I thank Jeff for bringing up a very obvious point. In 1979, I was on jury duty in New Jersey and paid $5 a day. And in 1980, I was paid $5 a day, and I was on a 3-week trial, and I was on a 2.5-week trial. And it is a big difference in your day. You have to dress nice. You can't wear your Ramones shirt. You have to go somewhere else besides where you normally go. You have to find a place to park, and often you have to pay for that. Here we don't have that. And I'm encouraged that Jeff brings up this point from the other side of the aisle, per se. And I understand the judge's attempt to give us something palatable, but I think we should really look into following, like Mike says, something graduated that makes more sense. I've been here where I've only been called in for 1 day or 2 mornings or something, and that's not particularly difficult to deal with. But if you're seated, I think automatically things should start to increase so that we get a better jury pool than the people like me who are compensated by work to miss it anyway, and it's really just food money for me. We want to get everybody possible into the jury pool, and some people really do need that money. So I would be very encouraged to move forward with looking at something more progressive in the next budget year.
Thank you, Mr. Thorsland. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Eric. So I know this session's not over with, but I always like to tie a bow on something. So in this case, just due to my ignorance, because I don't know, which committee gets assigned this task, or is there such assignment made that can bring this to closure and evaluate that?
I think we'd probably form an ad hoc committee. Kyle, what are your thoughts?
Are you asking about looking at what the financial impact will be of increases?
No, the financial impact will be based upon our evaluation, but my question is what committee or ad hoc committee can address the jury pool and just equitable compensation for people that are jurors? I'm asking a process question, frankly. If we just talk about it, it goes nowhere, and so I wanted to close the loop, and what's the next step? I'm asking.
I would think ad hoc, but I'm open to Chair Patterson's thoughts as well.
I think that Tammy would probably work with the courts to come up with what the different projections are, and then it would probably go through finance.
So typically, when we have it's a policy decision, but it's also very much a financial decision. And so typically, and this is a good commercial for the special finance meeting. So typically what will happen is if there's things like this that we, as a board or the administration thinks that we need to address, they will do the research. So the administration office, Steve's team would do the research in conjunction with whatever department it is, in this case, the courts. And then they would present that research to the board through the budget process that kicks off in May and ends in November. Usually, if there's decision points that we have to make, we discuss them more in detail in August, and then at a special finance meeting in September, where we actually then decide which way we want to go, right? So I don't know that we would necessarily need a special committee, because I think it could run through the budget process. And we've had this, on other issues before. So but the board can always signal, hey, this is something we want to think through during this budget process. And it's a more deliberative, I appreciate that what we have before us is an opportunity to vote on something that we have the money for right now to address a specific trial or set of trials that we know is coming up in this fiscal year. But I also think it is worth visiting on a more global scale. And we have the staff to do that work and take it through the budget process, right? Because then it also allows us to assess the possibility of doing that in concert with all of the other financial decisions and weigh that with everything else that we have to decide all at once. Where if we address something right now, we'd essentially be having to take it from fund balance, and that makes it a more isolated decision. And I prefer when we have shifts like this to run through the budget process, because it allows us to have a more universal decision.
Does that answer your question, Jeff? Sounds like a good process.
Yes,
Samantha,
thank you.
I'm sorry I've taken so long to get to you.
I have just a couple of points that I wanted to make. First of all, I was shocked to see how much a juror gets paid. If I had an option of either going to work or doing silver, what is the word I'm looking for? My civil duties as being a jury member, I would go to work. You have to tie in the fact that gas is high, depending on what part of the county they're coming from, and bills don't stop. So regardless if you needed that person for 1 day, 2 day, okay, that wouldn't affect their budget too much. But if you're going into weeks, yes, that price definitely needs to increase. I just have a question about the diversity of the jurors. How is that done? Could you explain that process? Thank you.
All right, thanks for the question. As I understand it, it's through the various levels of jury selection, where do we see diversity and what's happening to it?
Just to ensure that it is a juror of that person's peers, how is that process done?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. So there are a number of pressure points on the pool of jurors. So everybody is, all eligible citizens could be summoned for jury service. But the first, I'll call it a veto gate, first sieve through which the pool of eligible jurors passes would come at the jury commission. In other words, you get a summons, and there's a date printed on the summons that says, if you can't come, if you can't do this jury service and have some reason why you can't do it, show up at this date and time in front of the jury commissioner and say why. I am told that one of the leading reasons people can't serve that they tell the commission is, I can't afford it. My job won't compensate me, or I can't take the time off. So that's before we even get into the courthouse. There's been a narrowing of who's coming in to serve. And then when you're actually seated in the courthouse, there's a sort of randomization of who is called up to the courtroom. There's another random drawing as to who gets put in the jury box for questioning during voir dire. And during that process, people may say, things that they ought to have taken to the jury commission. For example, I am a single parent, I have 3 children, My child care does not allow me to do this. I can't afford to pay someone else to watch my children while I do jury service, and I don't have the social support to do it for a week or 2 weeks or whatever the trial is. And that's just for a normal jury trial. And then, you know, there are other, that tells you who is in the box. There might be people who have other financial hardships, medical issues are common sometimes. They don't feel like they are healthy enough to serve. We do try to make accommodations for jurors who have disabilities and want to serve. We make all the accommodations we can make for that. But that's just to say, in answer to your question, there are a number of different points along the way at which the pool is getting smaller and smaller. And then, of course, the lawyers get to question the jurors, and there are peremptory challenges that can be made to strike jurors, and there are for-cause challenges. Some jurors might say a reason that everyone would agree that person can't be a fair and impartial juror on the case, and they might be struck for that reason. So there are a number of different stages and different processes at work, but I do think if you look at who is actually sitting in the jury box, it's not always a fair representation of who lives in the county.
Anything else? Well, if there are no other questions, Ben, thank you so much for coming here and providing the information. It's been, I think, very useful for everybody. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, on to other business. Adoption of resolution number 2023-19, approving agreement between the Chief Judge of the 6th Judicial Circuit and the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police, Adult, and Juvenile Probation Officers, January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. Contracts were distributed electronically, but there are some hard copies that have been flowing around as well. Can I have a motion to approve? Mr. Goss? Second. Mr. Thorsland? Motion to second. Questions, comments? I don't know that we really have anybody here to answer them, unfortunately. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, adoption of resolution number 2023-20, approving agreement between the Champaign County Board, Sheriff of Champaign County, and the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police Court Security Officers, January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025. Can I have a motion? So moved by Taylor, second by Lockshin. Again, the resolution is floating around and has been distributed. I believe that was just the first one was distributed electronically. But again, we don't have any here to answer questions. Oh, we do. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Please come up to the mic. I'm sorry. The column blocked you. I couldn't see you. Yeah, please come forward. Just press the bar in front until the light turns red. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions about this resolution?
I'm going to ask an
Go ahead,
ignorant
Jeff.
question.
Yes.
Maybe I'm the only one that has not read this, and so maybe that's obviously my problem, because I haven't read it. So, thank you for being here, and I would at least like to have a little bit of understanding before I either say yes or no. So if you don't mind, can you just kind of give a Cliff Notes version of what we're looking at and what's changed from the past?
I guess kind of the biggest change, we added a seniority section in it, which, so for, this will affect, I believe, 4 of our employees. They had previous employment at the jail, and so they're moving over to court security. They're able to roll, to take 3 years of their jail time and add that to their pay scale. They get paid more at the jail than they would at court security. So this is an added benefit for them to move into that position. That was one change. I believe we added a little bit of sick time on, and that was just to match the other contracts so that they're all uniform. And then the pay was, I believe, 7% for for the first year, 5% for the second year, 5% for the third year, with, I believe, a $2,500 bonus the first and second year? Yeah, and those were really the big changes, I think, all in this contract. Everything else pretty much stayed the same that I can recall.
Follow-up question then.
Sure,
And thank you so much, I appreciate that.
sure, no problem.
So, trusting on your expertise, which I am not expert in this and probably never will be, but trusting on your expertise, do you feel that this contract is fair and reasonable and is the right thing to approve?
I do, yeah. I think they're very happy with it. I think we're being very fair to them and they deserve what they're getting. So, yeah, I believe.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
No further
Go ahead,
questions.
Chris.
Thank you, County Executive. We have a lot of listings for court service officers. And correctional, will these contracts help us to fill those vacancies?
Yeah, hopefully, that's the goal. Yes, for sure. Yes.
Go ahead, Samantha, sorry.
That's okay. So, just a question about the sick leave max accumulation, if you can explain that to me, because it increased from 135 to 220 days?
It did. It just went, it matches our other FOP unit contracts. We just made them all uniform. Our correction officers, that's what they get. And so we just made the court security the same as them.
FOP, can you explain?
Fraternal Order of Police, sorry.
Say that
That's
again.
for Fraternal Order of Police. That's who negotiates the contracts on the employee side. And so that would be court security, the law enforcement deputies, and corrections.
So they can miss up to 220 days? I mean, explain that to me. I just need you to explain the process.
That's just the amount they can keep on the books in a
And
year's
still
time.
get paid for? Or,
Yes, if they were to use that, that's the amount. If they cannot go, they can't keep that. So if you have an employee, say that never calls in sick for 10 years, 5 years, they can only accrue up to that amount, and then they're going to start losing time if they don't take that sick time.
okay.
But that allows them to have that amount of time actually on the books per se. If they were to have a serious illness or an accident,
What ifs?
yeah, they could have that on the book, but no more than that.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Mr. Goss, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just a little clarification. How much can they accumulate in a year?
That depends on each individual employee only accumulates so much, depending on how many years you've been there, but they can only accumulate, or they can only keep that amount on the book. Yeah. So a 1-year employee is going to accumulate less sick time a year than a 10-year employee. They're going to get more days, but they can only keep that amount.
Yeah, I
Does that make
understand that,
sense?
but yeah, but I mean, so the question becomes, let's say I've got a 10-year employee that for some odd reason has used his sick time and he starts year number 10 at 0.
Sure.
Does he accrue sick time faster than the same person who's employee day number 1? Do they accrue at the same pace, or does the 10-year employee accrue at a faster pace?
The 10-year employee accrues at a faster pace. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Dotto.
My understanding is that the paid parental leave, the 2-week paid parental leave is new to this contract. And we also, if you recall, we did that for the AFSCME contract. And out of everything that we've done on this contract, that's probably the thing I'm the proudest of. And we had really good conversations about that in the Labor Committee. We settled on 2 weeks, but I'm really glad that got in and that we've extended that. We gave it to our AFSCME side employees during the last negotiations. I'm glad to see that we're doing it for these contracts as well.
Any further questions? I agree. The addition of the parental leave is hopefully, it's not a large amount currently, but We are trying to attract staff, and if we can provide other incentives, I think that's a good thing for the county. Thank you very much. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, moving down, we have an update from our ARPA project manager, Kathy Larson. Kathy, can you come forward? Questions for Ms. Larson from the board? Oh, come on, somebody's got questions. Jeff, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for being here. I actually have quite a few questions. And maybe it's a question and a concern, and it's probably a concern because I don't know the answer. So, like, there are a number of projects here that left a lot of money on the table, as far, in my perspective, on the 2022 budget. It's my question, if I feel like I could point it out in deep, I don't really want to be that detailed on this one, but number one, these are all wonderful projects, but my question is, it's hard for me to imagine, like if I look at community violence intervention or affordable housing, in 2022, $32,500 is spent, and it looks like the allocation was $1.5 million. And my underlying assumption is if it's not, it just moves forward into the next year, that amount of money. And my challenge is, if it's difficult to spend $32,500 in 1 year, how will that project be able to spend $3 million in the next year? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
So I do want to mention our totals on this report were as of last week. We only had financial totals as of November 30th. So first, this report in the next month we'll have as of December 30th. So that will adjust some of the totals of actual used. And then I will also be moving forward some of the numbers that are under contract, like, for example, community violence and others, to 2023 with the remainder that hasn't been spent because they're under contract. For some department expenses that didn't get used, those would go back to the fund for later, but the contracts that we have would move forward. They're just not updated yet on this chart since we don't have year-end numbers.
Ms. Furtado.
Also, and this is probably not reflected on this, the projected budget from 2022 is what we budgeted, but literally every single project on this has a different start date. So to look, for example, at the ones we gave water money for water infrastructure to, I don't know, a dozen different projects. Some of those projects, each of them have a separate MOU. So those projects weren't even decided until the summer of 2022. And then all of those MOUs took various amount of times for various reasons to sign. So, and some of the projects were ready to go from day one. But just because they started in 2022, so the community violence, we made those decisions in October, and then there, and some of them are very complicated MOUs. So for those, both of those were umbrella groups with multiple signatories, right? And so then Kathy has to go to those people and get all of that paperwork done. So in some cases, the agreements were not even signed until the end of 2022. So in all of these cases, and this also includes the internal projects. So you could see here, there's a very, very short list on page 75 and 76 that have, those are the ones that are done. Mm-hmm. Everything else is in process. Mm-hmm. And you could look at some of these are in process and have been in process for months. Some of these have been in process for weeks. Some of them, I know there's at least one of the rural water projects that the agreement isn't even all the way done yet because there's some conversation with that municipality or water district about what exactly they're doing. So just because they started in 2022, also some of them, for example, Immigration Services, their project was an 18-month agreement, right? So each of them have different terms of projects, and that also includes, like, for example, We just did 2 more internal county or we didn't yet. They're on the agenda to discuss now for the coroner's office and I forget the public defender's office that we're going to consider. So it's reasonable to assume that those projects will be completed in 2023, right? But we'll continue to get internal projects throughout 2023. It's very likely we might approve one towards the end of 2023, and then that money would show up, right? So it isn't, I did want to thank Kathy. I had the opportunity, and I wanted to thank Steve. This is something I had wanted to do under the previous administration and that was not encouraged. I did have a chance to sit down with Kathy for an hour and a half, and we went project by project, and I asked her basically, how do you feel each one of these is going? Do you feel that to the terms of each of these individual projects that they're going to meet their goals, right? And we're going to do that quarterly. And obviously, Jim, if you'd be interested in ever attending those, but like just to kind of get an assessment, because and I want to also commend Kathy, because what was very impressive to me is like, I was like, so tell me what you think about this one. And she was like, okay. And she like knew all the details, right? So, but all of that is to say, we shouldn't be surprised that the money wasn't all spent in 2022. Some of them, even the terms of the agreement, like for example, the money that we gave to the Farm Bureau for, they're doing some PR work and helping us with easements for broadband, right? That will continue through 2024. It was in the 2022 budget, but that project is just now getting kicked off, right? So each of these, on this very complicated chart, each individual project has its own timeline. The thing that we have to do is make sure that the money is spent. I would argue that we have a clear understanding that the money will be spent and Jim and I have talked about this at length, and we talked about this at length in our finance agenda meetings. About halfway through 2024, we need a very clear-eyed view, are these funds going to be spent? Because if they're not spent in the categories upon which they're currently allocated, we do risk losing that money, right? So if in these continuing conversations we have with Kathy, if she comes back and says, hey, listen, I don't think the Farm Bureau is going to bill us for all of that money, then what we need to do is end that contract and swipe that money back so that we could allocate it to something else, an internal county need, so that at the end of the day, we've spent all of this money, right? And our goal is going to be to have more and more that's on this chart get pushed to the we're done with it chart, right? And right now, we only have like 10 things that we're done with, and looks like a 70 that we're still working on. And this is why we hired Kathy, because we needed an internal resource to manage all of this.
Samantha.
So as Dr. Fraternal just mentioned, will we have a special meeting to kind of get an analysis of where each organization is? Maybe mid-June of 2024, or so we'll kind of know, have a heads up?
Sure. We could do, I mean, that's the purpose. The other reason that we have this just as an open-ended conversation at the end of every full board meeting, so that if you have a specific question about any of the particular projects, I know, for example, Samantha, you were very involved with the small business, right? That this is an opportunity to say, hey, how are those going, right? Type of thing. But yes, we definitely, I think, as we go forward, especially as we get into 2024, need to bring to the board those conversations, right? Because, just to give another example, I could give a lot of examples. We gave money for a hazardous waste recycling facility that is dependent upon the organization that's working on that getting additional grant money, right? And we have a lot of confidence. It's a former staff member from John Hall's office. But at some point, we're going to need to make that assessment. Are they going to get that additional money in order to make that project realized? If not, it's a sizable chunk of money. It's $600,000. We had that conversation with that group. Then we're taking that money back to do something else with it, right? And so there's a lot of those moving parts. The same thing with the small business, right? We allocated it to 5 different pots of money. Some of them are just now getting kicked off the ground, but in 6 months, we need to go back, in a year, talk to the chamber and say, hey, is that, microloan program that you're running, is it going well? And if not, then we need to have a conversation about that, right? And so I do think going forward, like an assessment conversation with the board is going to be, that I think is part of our duty as board members, is to, we've said, this is our priorities, this is what we want to spend the money on. That's like step one. We have to see it through. We have to say, at the end of the day, did we accomplish what we said we were going to accomplish? And if not, then we need to make decisions about that.
Go ahead.
And so all the money needs to be spent from ARPA by December 2024?
2026.
2026.
Right. But
And-
it has to be decided and allocated by 2024, and the project needs to have started, right? But by 2026, the end of 2026, it has to be spent.
Thank you.
And my understanding is including the interest.
Further, go ahead, Mr. Goss.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a suggestion that probably next January, February, we get an update, because if it's a large sum of money, we've still got to go. I mean, we've still got to figure out how to get it spent, because because we've got a large sum of money, we've still got to find those people. Even though we know we've got projects, they've still got to get it spent, and they've still got to follow the rules, and they've still got to get with Kathy and and they've got to start to spend it. And so if we've had groups that haven't even started spending it by this time next year, we probably need to nudge them and say, are you going to get there? Because if you're not, we just don't want to turn this back in. I mean, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity for these folks, but life goes really, really fast. I mean, it'll scream past us.
And I think that there's a role for the board in that, right? So especially, say, for these rural water projects, y'all have relationships with the people that are doing these projects, so making sure that they understand. And in my meeting with Kathy, the Sangamon project got high praise for it was moving. So your district should be very proud. But right, I do think, if in 6 months, Kathy could do a lot of oversight, but it also might be helpful if a board member be like, hey, listen, you got to move on this, or we're going to have a conversation, right? I think that that's going to be really important for all of us. And, and the projects that we all, there's different projects that board members, you've done, you've been really involved with broadband, you've been really involved with small business. Chris was really involved with mapping the Muhammad Aquifer, right? If there's a project that a board member, it's in their district, or that they've been really involved in helping that, Kathy do that, because I do think that that's part of our job. I agree with you, Jim.
Samantha.
And I'm sorry, you just made me remember. Can we just keep Dobbins Down community in somewhere on the back burner as far as the issues that they are enduring with lighting and water as well? Just, I know we haven't had a chance to do that, but it's just something
That we still have money in preventing community violence. We still have money in water, and we still have money in housing.
Okay.
Those three categories, we have not allocated all of that money. So we have about a little under 2.5 million left in water. We have, we have 2.6 million left in community violence and $1 million left in housing. So all of those, and I will say there are some proposals, particularly in community violence and housing, that we are essentially waiting on Urbana right now. The city of Urbana has not made any allocations for or very few allocations for their ARPA money, and there's proposals there that I think maybe we could help match or be involved with, but we're not doing anything until we know what they're doing, and their process hasn't closed yet. So some of that, but yes, if Dobbins Downs is something you're interested, you should bring it. And I will say the water projects we've been running through Environment and Land Use Committee. Community violence, we formed a special task force, a small group board meeting that is still, I think, we didn't disband it. It's still in existence, technically.
Mr. Thorsland.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Kathy, especially I agree with Stephanie. First, I want to see this, completed page continue to grow. I actually think it's amazing how much we've gotten done in a short amount of time. It's almost impossible to spend money in this world. We talk about having to get 3 bids and MOUs done and all this other stuff. It really is hard to spend money, and the bigger the project, the longer it takes to get started. So I think we're actually doing really well, and Stephanie points out that Urbana is still trying to figure out what they're doing. And I don't want to shame them too much, but please, hurry up. Because we need to do this. I'm very interested in the water projects because I've been involved from the beginning, and because I'm a former rural guy, so, District 1 guy. And the ability to do what we did up in District 1 and have that nice package all wrapped up real tight was good, but I would like to do more. I spent a lot of time running around Dobbins and running around Garden Hills. And I think with that surplus money, I hope to see, like Jim says, maybe in January of next year, if we see that we still have some money and we have stuff that we can do and get started with, that we get that moving along. Because this is places where we can make huge differences in people's days and their lives and their years. That Jim is right, we're not going to get this again. So thank you, Kathy, very much.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Just one more quick comment, and I appreciate the explanation, because I agree with Jim, and I'm sure everyone in this room. I would like to see the money used as promised. And so when I see a gap like that, I think, well, what happens if the money doesn't get used? So I appreciate the explanation. And my concern is, and I'm sure now that we're on top of this, that the money does get spent and the needs do get met.
Thank you, Jeff. Go ahead, Chair Patterson.
I just want to clarify, you have projects that are in contract negotiations. It's just the 3 bullet points. And you've done intergovernmental agreements and contracts have been completed with all the other.
That's correct. Those are the only 3 that we're currently either drafting or getting signatures. I believe one other is that I'll double check with the Penfield Water District that they needed to send back a signed amendment that we made late 2022. I can double check on that, but that would be the only other one. But those are the 3, yeah.
Okay, it's a lot of stuff that you've gotten done and just really impressive. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much, Kathy. Appreciate you coming. Okay, moving on, item B2, request for purchase of a replacement x-ray machine for coroner's office. I believe we had some fairly significant discussion of this at earlier meetings. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to say with regard to this? I know the machine that we have now is not functional, and we're having to ship some of the coroner's business out to other areas for x-rays. Anybody have any comments, questions about this? Mr. Patterson.
So we're looking at 41,000. I just had no idea x-ray machines were that cheap.
It's a point well taken. All right. In order to move forward to this, we just need to have a consensus from the board to move in this direction. Just do a straw poll, show of hands, all in favor of expending this money. We are in favor of this. Thank you very much. And I'm sure our coroner will thank you as well. Item B3, request to purchase the Justice Text Program. Liz Pollock spoke very eloquently with us the last time we were here. She's present. Do we have any questions of Liz before we do a similar show of hands on spending these dollars? Any questions? Thank you. You did such a good job that we are speechless. We don't have any further questions for you. Show of hands in favor of purchasing this. Clearly we are in favor of it. Liz, thank you for coming and waiting this long. I appreciate it. All right, is there any other business before the board that anyone wants to bring up? Hearing none, let's say go Illini. We are adjourned. Thank you.